but otherwise we can start.
Okay.
Let me see if this works. 1, 2. Okay. This is the podium mic, but I'll just stay on it for the very beginning.
Okay.
The roll call.
All right, so we're gonna
Okay, go ahead.
go. Okay. All right, we'll call our meeting for Monday, June 27th to order. And if all would please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, Board Vice President Jeffrey Morgan.
Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you so much. We'd like to welcome everyone out to our board meeting, especially those who are visiting with us from the community. And I know we have, I believe, a teacher out and a student here with us today as well. We're always excited to have you. To get us started tonight, we'll turn it over to our superintendent of schools for some introductory comments. Oh, sorry, I got ahead of myself. Can we do a roll call? Thank you.
We sure do. President Gilbert,
Present.
Vice President Morgan,
present.
Secretary Scott, Board Member Tripp,
Present.
Board Member Tyler.
Present.
You have a quorum 4-0.
Thank you. Okay, now everything I just said to welcome you, I'm saying again and turning it over to our superintendent of school, Dr. Lisa Cleveland.
All right. I have just a few introductory remarks, and we have a rather full agenda, so we want to get started as quickly as we can. Okay, next slide, please. We appreciate everyone being here. Thank you for being here. We have just completed, the board has just completed a 2-hour work session prior to this meeting on CTE models and programming. And so in addition to the discussion, the discussion also focused, must be catching.
Right now, I'm sorry, I started it.
The discussion also focused on a possible partnership with the Central New Mexico Community College. And this presentation discussion has been the culmination of several months of hard work. I have met with President Hartzler on several occasions. We have committees that have worked, that have put just untold numbers of hours into talking about what that might look like and how that might work. And so this is kind of narrowed down now to a couple of options that the board was to look at. And it was a good discussion, a lot of good questions, and a lot of thought. We do have, as I said, a very full agenda, so I will try to keep my comments brief. We have some commendations this evening, and that's always a wonderful part of our agenda. Larry Davis, who is the Director of Career Technical Education, will recognize Ethan Goldstrom from Rio Rancho High School, and he has received one of DECA's International Top 10 Awards, which is a really big deal, in Communications and Marketing Role Play. And we have had very active DECA organizations in this district for many years. They have always been very competitive, always done very well, and represented not only our district and community, but our state very well in the national and international competitions. So this is a wonderful commendation, and I hope that Raymond McKinney is here this evening, but he is the advisor for this very successful program at Rio Rancho High School. We thank him for all of his time and support. And congratulations, Ethan. So we'll turn that over to Larry in a couple of minutes. Beth Pendergrass, the Chief Communications Strategy and Engagement Officer, will accept a generous donation from the employers at the Rio Rancho Intel campus. Board policy requires that the board officially accept all donations to the district. And so our real appreciation to all of the Intel employees who have always been our good friends and neighbors and always very supportive of our school district. The CTE program model, as I said, the board held a workshop prior to this meeting, about 2 hours, included the possibility of what a partnership might look like with C&M. The board reviewed various program options for the new CTE Center, formerly the Alliance Data Building in northern Rio Rancho. and talked about what much of the building is scheduled to open in the fall of 2023. Some programs will actually start as early as this year, but it will be fairly limited. The proposals are complicated, multifaceted, and as I said, it was the result of many months of meetings and many discussions. One of the challenges that they've been looking at, the board has been considering and discussing, is that funding for the project continues to be particularly challenging. We need to continue as a community and as a district to push for additional support from Santa Fe. This is a year which there's going to still be some resources available, and we believe that career technical education is one of the most important areas. It is necessary to rebuild our workforce in New Mexico. It will help us grow the pie larger instead of just fight over the pie. It is a really important factor for economic development when people look at New Mexico and look at our community. So we need to continue to put those issues out in front of the legislature and the executive. The board, in the discussions that we held before this meeting, indicated that it was ready to move forward based on the information that they've received. And so then a vote will be proposed. We had asked the board if they felt like they needed additional time to review the information. We could delay the vote until the July 12th meeting, but time is really essential. We really need to get moving on this. A lot of things are waiting on a decision, and so I think that the board can speak for itself. They may have additional questions, but are willing to at least have that discussed during the business meeting this evening. And the proposals were presented by Carl Eppelman, who is our Chief Academic Officer, Mike Baker, our Chief Operations Officer, and Larry Davis, again, our Career Technical Director for the district. And they presented those proposals, and they will be available to answer any additional questions that the board might have. We have another important agenda item, an MOU between Sandoval County and the district. The board will be asked to approve a memo of understanding regarding a donation of $100,000 for CTE. So we're excited about that. The district is appreciative of this very important donation to the new CTE Center and Program. And information about the donation will be presented by Carl Eppelman and Larry Davis. As previously stated, all donations must receive approval from the board, and we certainly appreciate this very kind donation from the County Commission. A strategic plan. The district has been moving aggressively forward with the strategic planning process these last several months. All of the board members have participated in some or all of the sessions, and there has been also from our community, our staff, students, and parents who represent a wide variety of backgrounds, have all participated in this process. We've learned a lot, we've heard a lot, we've listened a lot. And so from that information, a plan has been developed, and that plan will be presented this evening. Again, we want to thank everyone who participated in this process. We know you're very busy people, you have a lot on your plate, but it was really very helpful to hear from a wide variety of folks. One of the most interesting that we heard from were our students. And they have a very unique, unique view of how things are working in our district and what things might need to be improved. And so we appreciate their time as well. The time and everything that was pulled together, I think we have a really good package in terms of identifying one of the most pressing issues for the Rio Rancho Public School District. And so Beth Pendergrass, Chief Communications Strategy and Engagement Officer, Dr. Happy Miller, who is our Executive Director for RADA, Jerry Reeder, Executive Director for Special Services, and David V. Hill, who is our Executive Director of Finance, will be the presenters this evening. We did have a facilities master plan that was to be brought to the board. I'm recommending that you table that. There's still some additional work that is going on the plan, And so if the board is agreeable, we would like you to table that this evening. We will bring it at a future board meeting. And I think that some of the issues and concerns that have been raised by the board may be addressed with some of the work that's being done on the plan. And we have a couple of policy changes I want to highlight this evening. These are proposed changes, and this is a first reading, so there will not be any action taken by the board at this particular meeting. The first one is 622, and it proposes some changes in student fees. And this information will be presented by Carl Leppelman and Sherry Carver, Executive Director of Student Services. The funding to continue to provide no-cost credit recovery or summer school no longer exists. It was funded with federal COVID-19 funding. The board has, been very supportive of this in the past, and want to certainly highlight the fact that we are returning unless the board says otherwise, because the funding no longer exists for the program. It also clarifies how students can be charged for things like field trips, and specifies the specific items for which fees can be assessed. And as he's not, I don't believe he's here, David Mann is here, so he can answer that. But the policy has been reviewed by district's legal counsel. All right, and then the next one is policy 906. This is one that proposes some changes in the want zone areas due to the ongoing shortage of drivers. This would result in the student transportation department transporting fewer students, and they hope that that will reduce the late pickup and delivery of students. Rio Rancho Public Schools continues to aggressively recruit drivers. Just for the record, our district pays just under $20 an hour, and drivers also have the opportunity to obtain benefits such as medical, dental, and vision insurance. And on top of that, they have an opportunity for matching retirement options. So we need the community's help in finding drivers. It's really a much more attractive position financially than it's been in years past. And we hope there's some good folks out there who would be willing to help us transport our students to and from school. Again, this is a first reading, and so no formal action can be taken by the board at this particular meeting. And this policy has also been reviewed by legal counsel. And then the last is just a very brief update on COVID-19. We do continue to see a good number of COVID cases throughout the district, even in the summer, the summer school, or those folks who are 12-month employees. But we are still seeing cases throughout the district. We are discontinuing, though, the PMG testing site, which was across the street in the Amaret building. It has been closed unless the situation really changes significantly. We really do not anticipate reopening the site. However, if people do need home tests, any district employee who needs one should simply make that request from Mariah Affentrager, who's our Director of Student Services, and that should be directed here to the district office. We can provide you with opportunity to test at home. So again, the site across the street is being closed, and unless things change dramatically, we do not anticipate that it will reopen. And are there any questions?
No questions?
Okay, thank you. I tried to get through that as quickly as I could. All right.
Thank you, Dr. Clement, I appreciate it. Okay, so moving on from there, our first is to approve the prioritized agenda and proposed time allocations.
Madam President, this is Board Member Jessica Tyler. I'd like to make a motion to approve the prioritized agenda with the removal of item F from the business section and the other proposed time allocations.
It's Board Member Jeff Morgan, I second.
Okay, there's a motion by Jessica Tyler and a second by Jeff Morgan. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 4-0. Now moving into our public comment. We don't get any more on that. Great, thank you. So for our public comment, we just have one public comment tonight that came in through our public comment form online. It's by Bruce Gustin, and his is in regards to a recent article in Education Week that a U.S. environmental agency is taking applications for $5 billion in rebates for replacing diesel school buses with electrical equivalents. He said, given the staggering price of diesel fuel today, this could be a good opportunity, and is hoping that we're investigating that opportunity. So that's it for public comment. If anyone wishes to give public comment in the future, we love to have you here in person, but we also love them online. So we're just grateful to hear from the community. So thank you for that. Okay. Going into our commendations. So our first commendation will be on DECA International Top 10 Awardee, Communications and Marketing Role Play. And so Larry Davis, our Director of Career Technical Education, will be presenting this, and then I'll just have you go ahead and introduce those who are here with you tonight.
Let me turn it on. Something right.
Check. Over there. Madam President, members of the board, Dr. Cleveland, it's my honor to be here. This is probably the piece that I've missed most about being a school principal, is being able to recognize students for their achievements. So tonight we're recognizing Ethan Goldstrom, and Ethan is an active member of the Distributive Education Club of America, otherwise known as DECA. And what DECA does is it prepares emerging leaders and entrepreneurs for careers in marketing, finance, and management. And you're gonna see when I read this young man's bio what an outstanding individual he truly is. Ethan Goldstrom joined DECA in 10th grade and states, it was rough. It was a rough start because we didn't have an advisor for half of the year until Mr. McKinney showed up. Since then, Ethan has competed every year as a 3-time state qualifier, a state finalist twice, and earned first place at state last year. He attended the International Career Development Conference in Atlanta and placed as a finalist in Human Resource Management. This is an incredible big deal. I mean, we're talking about an international competition where there are thousands of contestants, and this young man placed in the top 10. Last year, Ethan served as president for the first time. While in this role, he valued the experience of being able to put his leadership and organizational skills to work. Last year, Rio Rancho High School had the highest percentage of state qualifiers in the entire state. He attributes this accomplishment to their hard work as a team and the strength of its members. Notice he didn't say anything about himself, and that's how you know he's a winner. Apart from DECA, Ethan has been active in National Honor Society for 2 years and often participated in service projects. He will be attending UNM in the fall, pursuing a major in sociology, and is looking into the path of human resources after he completes his degree. Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Dr. Cleveland, it is my absolute honor to introduce Ethan Goldstrom. Your reputation and your hard work precedes you. So thank you so much on behalf of Rancho Public Schools. It is an honor. Thank you. Next, I'd like to introduce Mr. Raymond McKinney. So upon my aspirations of becoming a school principal, one piece of advice I got was, you have to sponsor an activity. And I didn't really know what that entailed, so I said, okay, I'll do that. And at that moment that I realized how difficult it is to sponsor any activity, because it goes so far above and beyond what you do in an already demanding day. From booking hotel rooms in other states to sacrificing their mornings and their afternoons, these teachers go so far above and beyond. And I would like to tell you, sir, you are a difference maker, and you are very much appreciated.
Would you go back to us, or do you have more?
I was just going to say thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So before you all sit down, I just make everyone on the board talk to you and say how great you are, which is great, right? So first I would like to, Dr. Cleveland, if you want to say anything.
Again, just congratulations, Ethan. It really is a big deal. It's highly competitive, and so thank you. You're to be congratulated for this outstanding accomplishment. Mr. McKinney, thank you for coming in and taking that on. because it's been a good program for many years, and we've had wonderful results, and it would be very sad for that program to not be able to continue to be offered for our students, so we thank you as well. But again, Ethan, congratulations to you.
Thank you. Gertrude?
Mr. McKinney, thank you for all you do for all the students at Rio Rancho High School. We truly appreciate it. And Ethan, do you know Mr. Mike Chavez, our Human Resource Director? Mr. Chavez, would you raise your hand? Okay. Ethan, would you make sure your point? We don't want to lose you. We want you to stay taking care of our community and our school district in the future. Got a great future ahead of you. Congratulations.
Just want to say thanks for your hard work, and one of the things I preach all the time, whether it be to my kids or other kids, there's a reward for hard work. So again, thank you for all your hard work. Greatly appreciate that. And then more importantly, for representing our school district. So thank you.
I'll just echo what the rest of the board said. Congratulations. I'm really happy to hear you're going to UNM and staying close to home. We want to keep that talent here like this, David. So congratulations. And Mr. McKay, thank you for your leadership as well.
Well, and thank you so much. I think one of my favorite things is to have teachers and have students in here that we can see and hear the wonderful things that you're doing. So thank you so much for being here tonight. We really appreciate it. So thanks.
Madam President, if I could, I would like to ask Mr. and Mrs. Goldstern, parent attendants, to please stand up and be recognized for their outstanding support of their students. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, for our next item, my next favorite thing is getting a donation. So we have an acceptance of the Intel donation. Judge Pendergrass, our Chief Communications Strategy Engagement Officer, is here.
Thank you. Good evening, Madam President Galbraith, members of the board, and Dr. Cleveland. Before I get to Intel, I just want to say that Ethan truly is a distinguished young man, and he was one of our student representatives on our strategic planning process, and so he participated in our focus and vision groups. So
I'm so impressed with the
remarkable.
students that we
Yes.
had on that process. It was amazing.
Yes. So during the month of May, Intel held their 24 for 42 event to celebrate Intel's 42 years in New Mexico. Intel employees provided $24 of the Intel volunteer budget to go to one of 4 organizations, one of which Rio Rancho was selected. And we are being awarded this evening $12,817.66. And before I introduce Intel, our partnership Intel, I just wanted to mention that over the last couple of years, we've received approximately $30,000 from Intel to help with our CTE efforts. And Larry is currently working on another $20,000 grant with Intel. So I want to appreciate them for their continued generosity. With that, I want to introduce Raquel Leon with Intel New Mexico Public Affairs. She has a nice fancy check to bring up. I'll let you say.
Yeah, well, first off, I appreciate the invitation to be here and to provide this wonderful check to our district. Rio Rancho Public Schools, I'm not kidding when I say you guys are the best district. I have the opportunity to work with many districts, and you by far are my favorite. I might be biased, but I thank you for everything that you do and provide opportunities to Intel, to our employees, to their children who become students, and also a part of our volunteer program as well. So thank you all. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm gonna get a picture with her.
How do we want to do that? Do you want us to come in?
Yeah, come in like this.
Okay. Dr. Cleveland, you're just going to Okay, good. Well, giant step by small.
Right, 1, 2, 3, money.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I know. Did you were trying to.
Again, we have a long-standing relationship with Intel over many, many years, and we appreciate the fact that you've been community-oriented and good neighbors and supporters of our district. And so, again, thank you very much. And my understanding, this comes from the employees,
It comes from
and so they donate it. And so I think it's real important that, please, through your publications or however, express our thanks to them and how much we do appreciate them thinking of us and just giving us those personal donations. So thank you.
Thank you. On behalf of our board, honestly, I think the one thing that we've all learned is how important just every dollar is since we've been on the board. And so every and any donation that we can receive, we're just so, so grateful for it. So thank you so much for bringing this tonight. We appreciate it. Thank you.
And we appreciate your bias. We just love it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
In this case, it's okay.
If you take a vote, this is on as an action item, so you can do that.
Oh, it is here in accommodations. I thought we have it on here later on too. Don't we? Oh, that's a whole nother one, isn't it? Okay, yeah, we'll go ahead and take a vote. You want to take a roll call vote for us, Kim?
I can do that.
We need a motion.
Motion.
Oh, we do.
I'll let you use a motion, yes.
All right, I'd like to give us a motion.
This is Board Member Jeff Martin. I make a motion of the acceptance of the Intel donation.
Gary Tripp, second.
I have a motion by Jeff Morgan, a second by Gary Tripp. You want to take a roll call vote for us?
Yes, I would be glad to. Vice President Morgan,
Yes.
Secretary Scott isn't here, sorry. Board Member Tripp,
Yes.
Board Member Tyler,
Yes.
President Galvin.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you again. All right, our next item is to approve the consent agenda. Any questions on the consent?
Board Member Jeff Martin, I make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Board Member Jessica Tyler will second.
Okay, we have a motion by Jeff Morgan, a second by Jessica Tyler. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 4-0. Okay, moving into our business portion, we'll start with a report. The Board of Education met in a closed executive session on Monday, June 13th, 2022 at 4:30 p.m. for the purpose of discussing limited personnel matters as permitted under Section 10-15-1H2 of the Mexico Open Meetings Act. The matters discussed in the closed meeting were limited only to those specified in the notice of the separate closed meeting. This meeting was recessed at 5:25, resumed at 7:30 p.m., and then adjourned at 8:25 p.m. Our next report, the Board of Education met in a closed executive session on Monday, June 20th, 2022 at 3 p.m. for the purpose of discussing limited personnel matters as permitted under Section 10-15-1H2 of the New Mexico Open Meetings Act. The matters discussed in the closed meeting were limited only to those specified in the notice of a separate closed meeting. Okay, so next we will move to item C, which is to consider the approval of a Rio Rancho Public Schools C&M Career Technical Education Partnership Model. And as Dr. Cleveland said, we've discussed this at length for some time. I would like to invite Carl Levelman up to just for any questions that we may have, and knowing that we may have some questions also, of course, for Larry Davis and Mike Baker during this time too. So you guys are welcome to either come up or however you guys would like to. Carl, do you want to present something, or do you want us to just start going through questions since we've already discussed a lot of this at length?
President Galbraith, members of the board, Dr. Cleveland, just take questions I think at this time.
Okay.
I think we reviewed the options during the workshop fairly extensively.
Okay. So with that, Dr. Cleveland, do you have anything before we go into questions?
No, I think let's just hear
Okay.
what the questions are
Okay.
first from the board.
Sounds great. So I'll start with Gary Tripp for any questions that he may have.
I have a question I'd like Mr. Baker to express to the community and go over what he went over with us and making sure that if this is something that the board votes on, that the students that attend this partnership will be to the best of our ability with our great security team, our wonderful teachers, our great leaders that are in this room, that we're going to make sure that we do everything to make sure that it's a very safe environment, and some of the strategies that they came up with So that's my first question. Thank you, Mr. Baker.
Sure. For the audience, I'll give you a little background, because really, we reviewed it in another session. And so the question before the school board this evening is, we're looking at developing a partnership between Rancho Public Schools and C&M. And the question is how will that partnership look? Will it be a partial partnership or will it be a full 50-50 partnership? And one of the issues concerning the 50-50 partnership is that we would have C&M students that are adult students in the same classroom setting as our students from high school or our minor students. And so there would be a commingling of students. And so kind of looking into the safety factor, and obviously we believe that there's some issues surrounding commingling of minors and adults. And we took a look at, can we do this and can we do it safely? And so currently we do send our high school students to C&M for dual credit courses. So it's nothing that's brand new. The new thing would not be sending our students to C&M campus, but the new thing would be that it would be our campus, and that our students and C&M students would commingle on our campus. So there's a little an issue there. It's really a legal issue. The practical issue is really the same. And so the question then is, well, what can we do if we were to do this, if the board votes to commingle students? Can we do it safely? And so myself and the executive director from Safety and Security, she went down to C&M. And at C&M campus, they actually have a high school in the middle of their campus. And high school students are free to roam the entire campus. They go to high school classes within a particular building, but when their core classes are done, they then go onto C&M campus and they go to whatever core classes or whatever CTE classes that they sign up for. So there is that commingling, and they've been doing this for a number of years, specifically with APS. So this is nothing brand new, but they do it now. And so we met with their safety director and their safety staff, and we asked for concerns. What concerns do you have, and what have you experienced over the years? They've told us they really haven't had any issues other than a small, physical confrontation from time to time. But other than that, they've actually, the experience has been very positive. And so we from there, we kind of brainstormed, okay, well, what can we do that kind of goes over and above that? Because C&M really doesn't they don't offer any additional safety measures. So some of the safety measures that we can do is we will have security within that building that will be walking around to ensure that all the students are safe. That's one thing. C&M does do that. The next thing that we can do is provide some type of orientation to the parents and to the students to describe to them what the environment will look like and any hazards or risks that may be presented to them. And then we could also present classes to the students and to the adults on how to keep one's self safe. And not just that environment, but really any type of environment. And then I think lastly, we can also ask the parents for some type of a waiver. Given that they have this understanding that there will be adults and minors potentially in the same classroom. And this way that demonstrates that they have, that they're aware the environment like they do now when our high school students go to C&M campus, they have an awareness of the environment. And so those are some of the things that we discussed in our meeting, and that is presented to us right now.
Thank you, Mr. Baker. And thank you, because I just want to make sure the public knows that for a lot of administrators in this room and for the school board, safety is taking care of our children is the number one priority, and I appreciate the comments. So my second question is for Mr. Davis, just to kind of give a review to the community, if you would, about what we're looking at, possibilities in 22, 23, 23, 24, and beyond. Just a little overview. I know it's not anything set in stone, hopefully people take this is what we're striving to do.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. So in the school year 22-23, due to an increase in students wanting to participate in our automotive class, we were able to hire another automotive teacher. That's going to extend our enrollment to double the size. It's at 48 right now. We're anticipating to get 100 students. They're already enrolled. We would be utilizing the facility in this capacity as a hybrid because there are plug-and-play classrooms ready to roll where we could house the students and to do the academic side. But there are also some areas where we could do some small engine repair or some lab type areas, and we're prepared to purchase the equipment to be able to do that. We'd also like to continue our partnership with the district's transportation department and utilize for the lab, especially for those students that are going to be in the advanced autos technology class. Now, in addition to this, in this coming school year, 22-23, we'd also like to move in a mobile welding lab. Now, we've been in contact with C&M and with our industry partner, the 412 Union, Courtney Eichhorst, and they've agreed to get us a mobile welding lab to bring to the facility, where again, we could use internal classrooms in the facility, but then use the mobile welding lab to get the students outside to teach them how to actually weld and put the welders in hand. So those would be the only two programs in the 22-23 school year. The following school year is a little bit different, and in part because through grant money, we're able to hire a CTE pathway coordinator. This person would be at the comprehensive high schools and all high schools, really, talking about the programs that we would like to offer in the 23-24 school year, which would be food service management, continuation of the autos program, continuation of the welding program, and the introduction of a computer networking systems program.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. And Mr. Leppelman, I didn't mean to do this in order, but could you just give the community an overview about all the positives and even the struggles, if you want, that you've had to work on the last 2 years, getting this culmination, hopefully after we vote, getting started? And how we're going to make sure our kids still have a high quality, first class education.
Is this actually working?
Yes.
Tyler's
It
out.
is? Can you hear me there? I think so, no. Hold on a second. Is it on? Well, in the interest of time, I'll speak loudly. There are a lot of positives. We've been working, actually, we've doubled enrollment for technical in our system. You saw it with the cognitive accreditation presentation just a couple of weeks ago. So the Career Technical Center is a very important part of the community. It's part of our Career Technical Program. So as we developed this and we went through this process, we want to maintain the strong programs at our high schools, including the DECA programs, but also add value at the Career Technical Center. What we saw with industry is what they needed were skilled trades. And you look around us, there are no skilled trades. So the challenges have been getting access to all students to skilled trades. We think CNM is one way to do that. They're a critical part in that because they do one thing really, really well. They have career technical educational instructors. And one thing we struggle with now and then, although Larry Davis is actually very good at it because he found a very talented female welder to work in our program next year, is that correct? It's that continuity of program. So the positives we have is giving more opportunities, more pathways for our students that we have not had in the past, and they're high demand, high paid. So that's the speech, that's the vision. I think more importantly is getting them actually working with adults in a work environment, in an internship, a pre-apprenticeship. The vision we've had for several years is having that career pathway coordinator, someone to actually connect. And in early days of Rancho High School, we did have that person partly, and I think it's important to have high quality partnerships. So making sure the employer's doing their part, and the students benefiting and making sure they're doing well. So those, I think as we look at the options, it's critical we have a partnership agreement with CNN. How that looks, I think will change over time. This isn't a once and done. A user agreement needs to be established. It's always bargaining to a mutually satisfying agreement. I think we can get there. That's my.
Thank you, Madam President. I have no more questions, just one last comment, and maybe it's just to enforce that Representative Scott's not here, and not to put too much pressure on Melanie and all the other team members of the cabinet and Dr. Cleveland, but the board is striving is to do things as quick as we can to show the community that we're using their taxpayers to the best of their ability. And so don't get too mad at us when we keep pushing on and on and on as we go. Thank you.
Thank you. Jeff, do you have any questions, comments?
Mike, real quick, you had indicated that the C&M students are going to be coming to us. Where is this going to take place again? Just so I'm clear.
Do you know where Zenith is? Just up the road.
Okay, all right.
Pardon?
Yeah, I'm good at that.
Yeah, so, yeah, that will be the, Rio Rancho Public School, CTE Center, and, we will see what the level of partnership is with CNN.
Oh, that's good. Thank you.
No questions? Really quick, so tonight, as we look through it, so we have option 1, and we have like 1A and 1B, and then we have our second option. Are we gonna specify specifically like option 1B, or do we want to just specify what option 1 as a whole and then look into it more? And I'm not saying that's what everyone wants, but.
Yes, Dr. Cleveland said that could be, 1B could be an option in itself. I think we're really looking at either a full partnership or partial. That would be the partial meaning we would have, instead of commingling, students would come from the CNN in the evenings. Could be 0 hour before school or during the summers. Those are CNN adult students. That's the second option. That's the partial option. It's not, we're not saying it would not be a partnership. So it's either a 50-50, we like to say dollar for dollar kind of a, we're all about that, et cetera, because money is an issue. But it could be operational. We put in capital, could be a number of things. That agreement would need to come back to the boards to make sure we look at that. So you have that full partnership, which is really option 1, and that second, more of a hybrid, is option 2.
Okay. I have one other question. So we have a lot of like stakeholder days. We've had money coming in from Representative Hernandez and from other representatives. We've had just all of these. We see our Sandoval County is coming up. And yeah, not for technical. Do we see any sort of issues, and as we say we go for partnership with CNN, that anyone would feel upset about that? Just looking ahead, does anyone feel like that could be?
You should have an answer, but after they have answered, I'd like to say a couple things.
Yeah. You mean concerns that we
Just-
purchased equipment
just as they're
through the
putting
legislative
so much money
appropriations,
into
but we
it.
have adult students use it versus our
No,
students.
I guess just more that is it maybe not what they vision, do we see any sort of, I think I think that this could be a great thing, but do we foresee?
No, I don't, because in the junior appropriations that I think I wrote 2 years ago, we've actually received about $1.5 million in junior appropriation in the last 4 or 5 years. I started to calculate and total it up. We received significant dollars from the legislature. That's one example. Within the last one that was written, we actually put in CNN as a partner.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't describe specifically down to the detail, and tonight there are some uncertainties, but we certainly gave Senator Brandt that framework, that understanding. He was very much supportive of that. Tonight at Sandoval County, those dollars, we'll go over that with you, can be used in a number of ways. And as far as any other, I think there's a couple that Larry might want to add.
Okay.
Madam President, it's really exciting to talk about the CTE Center, but I have to stop myself from time to time and remind myself that we have 26 current pathways, including dual credit, with over 3,756 students enrolled in CTE courses right now. So I think it's fair to say that these monies will also support what's already in place as well.
Dr. Cleveland, did you want to?
But just a couple of thoughts. Just a comment at first about all of the grants and all of the things that we've been able to patch together. You can't run a program on grants long-term. Short-term solution, long-term it won't work. And so we've got to find a way to have a revenue stream. You can't every year be looking to do this patchwork of a little money from here, a little money from there. So we'll continue to work with our representatives on that. In terms of the way it's perceived, I think we had one legislator who initially was a little concerned because that individual, that representative, thought that that really should be CNM's role and not ours. And I think the point that was missing out of that was these are opportunities primarily for high school students. And CNM provides opportunities for college students. What we're trying to do is provide both and to maximize both. Over the years, as we have taken issues, problems and proposals to Santa Fe, all I've seen is a tremendous appreciation when we leverage our money and work together. And one of the areas where they're really frustrated sometimes is that we don't work together. And as a result, we duplicate expenditures or we don't make the most efficient use of the expenditures that we have. So I would think from the perspective of legislators and particularly Santa Fe, we are stronger going together than we are going alone. And they certainly have strong, a very good success rate in giving grants and changes in the formula in Santa Fe. And so I think in the sense of our chance to really change the system, we have a far better chance when we work together than when we go alone. So that's, they like partnerships. They like seeing governmental entities work together to try to solve solutions and problems. But I do think that we've got to find a way beyond just grants every year to have just enough to be able to do a grant for this, a grant for that. That will not be a solution long-term for running a successful career technical program, as we've seen in our neighboring states who have a dedicated revenue stream for CTE. And this is a great year for that to happen. We have plenty of money this year in Santa Fe, so hopefully we will see a commitment toward a regular revenue stream that we can count on every year to be able to fund these programs. That being said, we're very thankful for the grants we got because at least gave us an opportunity to get started and an opportunity to show some of the good things that we could do for students. And hopefully they'll look at that track record and say, okay, then this is worth really expanding. We have other districts that are very strong and desiring to work with us, such as Hobbs, Las Cruces. I think everyone across the state sees the need for this kind of program right now. And we particularly need it in terms of rebuilding the state's economy. So I don't think people will generally be disappointed. I think it will be the opposite. I think they will see us as wisely leveraging our money and trying to work together.
Thank you for that. Any other questions from the board?
Madam President, this is Board Member Tyler. I'd like to make a motion. I'd like to make a motion that we proceed with a full partnership or the 50-50 partnership between Rio Rancho Public Schools and CNM for our career technical education.
This is Board Member Gary Tripp. I'll second.
I have a motion by Jessica Tyler and a second by Gary Tripp. And Kim, will you take a roll call vote for us on this one?
Yes, ma'am. Vice President Morgan,
Yes.
Board Member Tripp,
Yes. Yes.
Board Member Tyler,
Yes.
and President Galbraith.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Was it?
Oh, 4-0, sorry.
Thank you. Do you want to say anything else to close out? Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Thanks for all the hard work that went into all that. And I have to say something really quick about Larry Davis, who has been spectacular in this role with CTE. And since you've taken on this role, you've just been full steam ahead, and it's been amazing to watch. So thank you so much for all that you do. We appreciate it. Okay. So next is to consider approval of a memorandum of understanding between Sandoval County and Rio Rancho Public Schools accepting a donation of $100,000 to support career technical education. And so once again, Carl Leppelman, our Chief Academic Officer, and Larry Davis, our Director of Career Technical Education.
President Calvert, members of the board, Dr. Cleveland. What you have before you is that MOU. It's fairly general, it gives us a lot of flexibility in looking at expenditures. We'll need that given moving forward with the full partnership. Commissioner Meek came forward with this, the Sandoval Commission, and we certainly recommend approval of that donation.
Dr. Cleveland, anything on this one?
No, except thanks to the county. We're really grateful for that. This is a significant contribution. It'll make a really big difference. And so we send our thanks to the county commission.
Echo that. All right, motion from the board.
Board Member Tyler, I would like to make a motion to approve the memorandum of understanding between Sandoval County and Rancho Public Schools accepting the donation of $100,000 to support the career technical education. Or technical education, sorry.
Board Member Jeff Morgan, I second.
We have a motion by Jessica Tyler and a second by Jeff Morgan. And can you do a roll call vote for us?
Vice President Morgan,
Yes.
Board Member Tripp,
Yes.
Board Member Tyler,
Yes.
President Calvert.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0.
Thank you. Thank you so much. All right, so next we will consider the approval of the RRPS strategic plan, which has had so much work that's gone into it for 2022 through 2023 through 2027 through 28. Beth Pendergrass, our Chief Communication Strategy Engagement Officer, is here along with Dr. Happy Miller, maybe she's mentioned her. And David Vigil, our Executive Director of Finance, along with Jerry Reeder, Executive Director of Special Services. I saw it very well. Long time. Go ahead.
Thank you. Good evening again, Madam President Galbraith, members of the board, and Dr. Cleveland. We are pleased tonight to present you with our draft strategic plan for the next 3 years. Next slide, please. The first and most important is just a huge thank you to everyone who participated throughout the process. In fact, I think if you participated at some point through the process, if you would raise your hand in front of me, behind me. So we've had really great representation throughout the process. Our core strategic planning team is here with me. We have David Vigil, Jerry Reeder. Happy Miller is at a conference, so she was unable to join us, but is here in spirit. Jeremy Dreskin was a community member who participated, and you met him throughout the process. And then I just also wanted to give a thank you to JC Oliver, who really helped set up the evenings and put things together. And so sometimes we forget to thank them, and so I wanted to make sure to thank her in this process. Next slide. We've seen this slide 100 times when we've been through all these presentations, but I want to keep it in front of us. We're going to talk again tonight a little bit about that process. We'll try and keep it brief. But we have been working, we went through the environmental scan, the surveys, our vision focus groups, and our steering committee, and we're here tonight to present the strategic plan. I kind of added up today and got a rough estimate that we have about 1,800 people who had a direct influence on our planning process between the survey, through all the groups, the focus groups, the steering committee, and our leadership team. And so I really feel comfortable that we had a really great representation of our community. Next slide.
So this is just a representation of all of the opportunities for our stakeholders to complete the survey that was sent out to solicit input, and also the various presentations that took place during the data collection period. So you can see here on, I'll pick out a couple here, but emails went out to staff, families, businesses, and community leaders. It was available on Facebook and Instagram. And then several presentations including presentations to the board, district leadership, stakeholder presentations as well. So.
Okay, the next piece is we move to our vision and focus groups. So we had 3 evenings of our vision focus groups, where we started the evening as a whole group, and then we separated into 2 smaller groups led by Evan Grasser and Gloria Rendon. We were able to really narrow those down. And throughout the 3 evenings, we had over 65 participants from the board, the community, students, and so on. The next piece is our profile of graduate. Our original profile of graduate was developed in 2016. Rio Rancho Public Schools believes that everyone, parents, students, teachers, and community members, should be working together to ensure the success of our graduates. Together, we established the profile of graduate to guide us as we prepare students for life after high school. So our main question was, what skills and qualities should a graduate of Rio Rancho Public Schools possess? And if you notice, we had over 3,684 answers. So the next piece is we went on to our SWOT analysis. That's strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And what are the best 3 qualities of Rio Rancho Public Schools? We have names. And so then the next slide, of all these, they came down to a point total. And so if you look at our top strategic themes that we took from our community, and then in our next slide, if you look at the top ones, they are the same. So we can show we have consistency, environmental scan, focus groups. Okay, next slide. So the top strategic themes that were identified were recruiting and retaining high quality staff, multiple pathways for students based on their strengths and interests, career-linked educational opportunities, learning programs, and opportunities that target students' individual needs, school supports that focus on students' mental and emotional health, and school safety and security. So we worked with the focus groups to narrow down the vision of the top themes.
From there, we formed our Stakeholder Committee, and our Committee was comprised of members of all 3 focus groups, and they represented a cross-section of the community, including students, faculty, administrators, and community members at large. From there, we narrowed down our 3 strategic themes and objectives, which came down to staff excellence, defined as the district will recruit, induct, and retain dynamic, diverse, and high-quality staff. Engagement and innovation, the district will provide rigorous, core and engaging ways of learning that encourage exploration of individual interests leading to college and/or career readiness. And safety and wellness, the district will create a welcoming, nurturing, inclusive, and safe environment that supports all students and staff. The 4th one, operational excellence, that was identified as part of our accreditation process. Thank you very much. The district will manage to deliver excellent service and meet the needs of our growing and changing community.
I want to point out that board member Tyler sat on the steering committee, as well as our student that was here earlier, Ethan, was also on that steering committee. So following our steering committee meeting, we went to our district leadership team, and we gave them the profile of the graduate, the final SWOT, all the data that we collected throughout the process, in addition to the accreditation report and the crosswalk between the strategic plan themes, same information that we presented to the board at the board retreat. We gave the DLT options to either submit information online through a survey or they could attend an in-person meeting. So we had both options available. Our main focus areas around those meetings were what are the most important priorities in each area? What do we need to do to improve in each area? What are we currently doing that we need to capture? What would a successful outcome look like and how would we measure that outcome? So we did a lot of work around those questions to develop our critical initiatives and our key measures. Next slide. So I'm going to take you through our first strategic theme, which is staff excellence. Our RRPS will recruit, induct, and retain a dynamic, diverse, and high-quality staff. So our critical initiatives under this theme is establish intentional and focused recruitment efforts that ensure a high-quality applicant pool, strengthen the induction approach to ensure successful mentorship and support of new employees, develop new strategies to encourage employee retention and longevity, provide meaningful, high quality, and relevant professional learning opportunities for staff. The key measures identified, which you'll notice are very broad, and we'll talk about that a little later, are applicant tracking and vacancy rates, surveys, interviews, and observations. Next, engagement and innovation. So our critical initiatives under this strategic theme: identify and communicate the guaranteed and viable curriculum, including areas where teachers can be flexible in their teaching to enhance rigorous, creative, and engaging learning environments that meet the needs of all students. Identify and expand innovative curricular, co-curricular, and extracurricular experiences that foster student creativity, interest, and voice. Provide pre-K-12 learning opportunities for students that align knowledge, skills, and personal interests with career and higher educational opportunities. You can see there in that theme that also captures some stuff from our accreditation that talked about CTE in the elementary level. Key measures, again, surveys, observations, document review, student enrollment, and participation. Next theme. Safety and wellness. Our critical initiatives support and implement systems that promote the attitudes, beliefs, and skills needed for success. Develop a comprehensive system utilizing district resources, outreach, partnerships, and supports to address student and staff mental and physical health and wellness. Implement strategies that foster safe, respectful, and supportive school environments. Continue to review and revise behavior and support services, policies, and personnel to promote physical, social, and emotional safety for all students and staff. And again, the key measures, surveys, observations, behavioral data, and document review. And our final is operational excellence. Our critical initiatives create systems that increase transparency and encourage timely and accurate communication to all staff throughout the district. Develop and utilize a systematic process of evaluation and data gathering to ensure programs, policies, and procedures are implemented effectively and with successful outcomes. Align resources with priorities and manage those resources efficiently, effectively, and transparently to build trust with all stakeholders. And identify ways to engage stakeholders and thoughtfully analyze and apply feedback to the decision-making process. And you can see a lot of the accreditation themes in those initiatives. And then again, our key measures, document review, surveys, and budget review. Next slide. So once we finalized our draft, we sent it out to every single person that had participated throughout the process, from our focus group, envisioning, our steering committee, our leadership team, the board, of course, we sent it to as well for any final comments or any concerns that they had. We received a few minor adjustments that we made, and they were already presented in this. Next slide. Next steps. So you saw that's a very broad document, because now what we're going to be working on is our yearly implementation plan. This is kind of a sample of what that would look like. So you would see the theme is staff excellence. The objective, RRPS will recruit, induct, and retain a dynamic, diverse, and high-quality staff. So then for each year, we would establish those activities that are going to help us accomplish those goals. And so that work will be taking place. The board will be included in that work, as well as many of our leadership team and cabinet. And so that work will need to begin right away so we can have those goals in place for the coming school year. Next slide. Execution and engagement. I think probably the most important part of strategic planning is in the execution of it. And so we want to continue to keep the board, DLT, and staff members engaged in the work. We want to have quarterly reviews and updates. We plan to track the information in Cognia's Improve My Journey. We want to continue to keep staff members, parents, and community updated on our progress. And then, of course, the implementation plans. So we've done the work of the planning and putting the words together, but now the important part is only beginning, and that's the execution. And that is an art. So with that, we stand for questions.
Thank you so much. That's a lot of work pointed out, so thank you so much. We'll start with Director with any questions.
No questions, thank you. Great work.
No questions, thanks for your work, appreciate it.
Also no questions, but I just want to say I've been involved in other strategic planning and other walks of life, and let me just say it's not nearly as productive or organized as it was here. And to involve the amount of stakeholders that you did and do it in a way where I think people's engagement with the process felt meaningful is a huge accomplishment for you guys. And I think you guys should be really proud of the work you did. It's not easy to herd those cats and actually come up with a product that can be useful. And so I think that the work done on this is something to be very proud of for you guys. Good job.
Thank you. My only feedback is the timer, every time it went on, I thought we were being invaded. Every time. No, thank you so much, Dr. Cleveland.
I just want to thank everyone who was part of the process. And there's two words that just jump out at me out of all of this. If you really wanted to shrink it down even to just 2 words. One was quality. Quality staff, quality operational procedures, quality use of resources, quality. And that's something our district has tried throughout its entire history to really focus on. And then the second is engagement. And certainly I mentioned a lot about student engagement, but also engagement with the community. Engagement with all of our stakeholders. That transparency comes from letting people see and participate in what we are doing. And so those 2 words just pervade this entire document. And I think they are important to reinforce. And I think they also are respectful of the history of the district in terms of what we've tried to do over a long period of time and are trying to do. So I just thank everybody who was part of the process. I agree, it was stressful for me. I don't like to move that quickly, you're moving it in the buzzer, right? But nobody got bored, and everybody had a chance to participate, and it moved very well. And I think there was so much similarity among the various types of data that was pulled together. I think we do have a really good understanding of what this community would like to see from its schools. So again, thanks to everybody that worked on the committee, and especially those of you who took leadership roles, and specifically, certainly Beth, for pulling this process all together so that it was as productive as it was. But I'm excited about it, and I think it's something that we can jump right in. And this whole issue of engagement, engaging students, having them interested in learning. One of the things we kept hearing is the joy of learning. Go back to the joy of learning and learning what students like, and building on those interests. So you've seen the last comment is we're already underway with some of them, so I hope you like them because we're already moving on some of them. But what we need now is for the board to approve and support this plan, and so that's what the committee and the administration is asking the board to do this evening.
Madam President, I make a motion for the approval of the RRPS strategic plan for the 2022-23 through 2027-28 school years.
I'll make a second.
We have a motion by Gary Tripp and a second by Jessica Tyler. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 4-0. Thank you so much.
And I just heard that because actually it's 22 to 25. We did a 3-year plan.
Oh,
Okay.
Sorry,
The motion,
we can redo
Let's
it.
amend the motion.
Yeah, well, let's amend the motion.
we good?
Just
Okay.
amend it, yeah.
Make a motion to consider approval of the RRPS strategic plan for the 2022-23 through the 24-25 school year.
I'll second that motion.
And then all in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you so much. Well, it's funny because when you said 3 years, and then I was looking here.
I know,
Yeah, I didn't catch that, sorry.
That's perfect.
I'm sorry.
So thank you, and we're excited to move ahead with that. So
Thank you.
so much.
That will be the next 3 years.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're skipping up, so we're gonna go down to G, which is a first reading of adoption of policy 622, student fees. Carl Lippelman, our Chief Academic Officer, along with Sherry Carver, our Executive Director of Student Services, will be presenting.
President Alworth, members of the board, Dr. Cleveland. This fee policy is almost like a new policy. We've got all the changes in there. And it's good. It's time for us to do that. It's the first reading. I don't know if we want to highlight, change it, because I think it's the whole thing has changed. Pretty much. I think there's some things in common because I've been part of that first policy with Dr. Cleveland looking at that. So there's some things that are common, some things that are different. How would you like to walk through this? Just with questions, or how would you like me to go through the policy?
Well, do we have questions on those? We can just start going through the questions if that's everyone. comfortable with that. So we'll start with Gary Tripp. Any questions that he has on this policy? It's up on your screens too.
So, questions or comments, but on page two of 3, or number 2, page 2 of 3, there's examples about extracurricular activities. I don't think there's an extracurricular in the example. I think extracurricular is sports, but I think there's activities, clubs. So I just thought I'd give a recommendation that maybe another example.
Well, it does say electives, or, you say just add extracurricular.
Yeah.
There's no example there.
Yeah, just an example, yeah.
Yeah, example of that, extracurricular.
And then my question is physical education that is required, that is a required course by the PED, so it could be middle school or high school, the one that's required. Are we allowed to charge for their uniforms?
Yes, we are allowed to charge, but the parent has the option, we always give them an option to bring that uniform as long as it meets the criteria. But remember, again, they are keeping that item, so that is their uniform. Is that,
No, as long as I just want to make sure it's legal.
Yes.
Because it's a required course for
it
graduation.
is a required course.
And it's a required course at middle school under the public education department, so.
Where are you at? That's on this, the PE.
That's on page 2 at the top. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I don't know exactly where it's at, Carl.
I think it's page 2, item 3.
So
Actual
yeah, as long
costs.
as it still has parents being provided the option to be able to purchase them, we should be good on that.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of students do buy their own.
Yes.
And then my last comment is on B on page 1 and E on page 2 and 3, just an observation, I thought they were repetitive comments that they needed to meet approval by the superintendent. But I don't know if they are repetitive or not. That was just a comment, so. That's what I had.
Yeah, go ahead. I think that you said B is the fee threshold.
Yeah, just repetitive, that they had to be cleared through the superintendent.
I think there are 2 issues there. One hurdle, I used to hurdle, as you know. One hurdle that fee has to overcome has to be approved by the administrator at the school site, or the superintendent has to approve any and all activity, classes, or fees charged to students up to $20. If it goes beyond that, you as a board, superintendent board must approve that. So I think that's a differentiator.
Thank you. That clarifies.
Any questions? Jessica, have any questions?
No, I did just want to clarify, we had visited this policy at the beginning of the year, and I was telling, board member Tripp, I said, when I saw it on the agenda, I was like, I thought we had approved that, but we had tabled it because of some of the issues, or some of the questions within the policy about what fees could be charged with. So, I'm glad that you guys took the time with the policy and that, council also reviewed it to make sure that you guys feel like it's a good policy now and covers what needs to be covered.
And I think it'll look cleaner next board meeting, it's all cleaned up and we can read it better.
My page, and my printer ink with that.
David and I worked very, with Carl, so I think it's a cleaner policy now.
Once it is approved, and you approve it, and with any changes, we come back to you, because there is one fee that is above $20 in the district, so we come back and approve.
Okay.
So.
And I want to point out the very last page about the waiver, and I think that's an important piece that we put in there for students on free and reduced lunches who can't afford any fee. They can request that through their principal. So I think that's an important piece that we all are going to put in there.
And I had one other very important piece. The board in the past, there were fees being charged for electives. We are now covering you, the district, many or most, in fact, not all, elective fees. And certainly the fine arts, and that was, so I think and I did verify with Renee Salcedo that it looks like we're covering most of those fees with our operational funds. So other than that, physical education and parking fees.
Thank you. Anything else from the board?
Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Cleveland, did you want to have anything?
Just to reinforce something I think that was said earlier, you see the reflection of the changes in state regulations. For example, you can charge a fee, but it has to be reasonable cost for that item. You also can charge a fee that goes back to that particular use. So a parking fee can be used to maintain the parking lot, maintain the security parking lot, those kinds of things. You see that shift for the money has to be very directly related, the fee has to be very directly related to the item that it's being collected for. So the example in here is like a parking fee, obviously can be used for providing parking lot maintenance, security and equipment for the parking lot.
Did see that, so thank you. Okay, so thank you for that.
Thank you.
I know, I was actually going to hear, but I'm not going to lie to myself. I'm going to do it better, but that's much better. Okay, so our next one is going to be our first reading of changes. Yes. No, that was just a first read. First read.
So no action.
So no action on
Yeah,
that.
first
It does have action, it was just a
Right,
typo. Yeah, so no action, we had action.
Next time.
Yeah, next time.
All right.
I have it right on my, no action.
Well, enough.
So yeah, we're good. You won't know me, actually. I do, make all sorts of problems up here, so. All right, so for next is item H, first reading to changes to policy 906, transportation. So Michael Baker, our Chief Operations Officer, and Lynn Carl, our Executive Director of Transportation, are here to present.
Okay, Madam President, Dr. Cleveland, members of the school board. So this evening, we do want to review the requested changes for policy 906, transportation. But we also want to talk about some of the other changes that we are proposing for transportation. And I'm going to have Lynn actually go through exactly what those changes will be. Before that, I would like to give a little background. And that background is during these COVID years, I think we're slowly getting this behind us, but it certainly has changed the landscape, not just here in New Mexico, but obviously across the country. And some of the repercussions from COVID have to do with the work environment. And so you've heard of this thing called the Great Resignation. A lot of people, because of COVID, they've taken themselves out of the workplace. And because of that, the United States and the state of New Mexico have experienced great labor shortages. One of those labor shortages has to do with CDL, commercial drivers, to include bus drivers, to include school bus drivers. So this particular school year has been a very difficult year for the transportation department, as you are well aware. And I can tell you that the origination of those difficulties have to do with driver shortages, school bus driver shortages. And the simple fact is that we're just not getting the applicants that we used to get. And so our labor pool is getting older, and they're retiring, and we have vacancies, and it's extremely difficult, and sometimes it's almost impossible to actually hire. Typically, the first thing we do is we say, okay, let's take a look at salary, let's take a look at benefits. Over the last number of years, we've increased the salary of bus drivers fairly significant. It was only a few years ago that a driver was making a little bit more than $13 an hour. Now a bus driver, after July 1, will make just under $20 an hour. And yet, we still have great difficulty filling those positions. Doesn't mean we're gonna stop trying. There's advertisements all over. When you travel actually the country, I was back east not that long ago, and every bus I saw, school buses, drivers needed. So it's not just an issue here in New Mexico or here in Rio Rancho, but it is school bus driver shortages across the country. So we know that we do not want to repeat another year like we had this year, specifically in regard to transportation issues. So we need to take reasonable steps in order to ensure success for next year. And so before the school board is a number of things. One is to actually amend policy 906. And in front of you, we're asking to incrementally increase the walking distance. And doing that will actually save routes or reduce the number of routes that we have to travel. And there's some other minor issues that were also added in order to ensure that this policy is in line with the law. So Lynn is going to go over some of those steps, not just increasing the walking zone, but other steps that we want to take, again, in order to increase our chances for a good year next year. So I will turn it over to our Executive Director of Transportation, Lynn Call. Thank you.
Good evening, Madam President, Galbraith, board members, Dr. Cleveland. As Mike stated earlier, that we are proposing to change the walk zone for the students. As you know, during the 21-22 school year, it was a very difficult year for transportation, not just for us, but nationwide, as Mike had stated. We continue to have a severe shortage of bus drivers. We have taken extra steps to try and make sure that we're advertising and trying to get drivers in as much as we possibly can. But we were still extremely short of bus drivers all year. As you know, this led to buses being extremely late, doubling up on routes, things like that. Students were missing out on educational time. We are working very hard to try and make sure that we do not have those same problems in this coming school year. There's some steps that we have taken already and steps that we're going to be taking for the coming school year to try and prevent that. And part of that is reducing the walk zone for all of the schools. Currently in elementary school, the walk zone is 1 mile. So if you live more than 1 mile, you're eligible for a bus. We want to change that to, if a student lives for elementary, more than 1.2 miles from the school. They would have to walk 1.2 miles to go to school. For middle school, the current walk zone is 1.5 miles, and we want to increase that to 2 miles. So if you live over 2 miles for middle school, you'll be eligible for a bus. If you live 2 miles or less, you will have to walk to school. For high school, the current walk zone is 2 miles, and we want to increase that to 2.5 miles. And so if they live over 2.5 miles, they would have to walk to school. Steps that we have taken so far, as Mike had mentioned before, is we have really worked hard, and I want to thank everybody for pitching in and helping getting drivers a great salary. Not in all my years of busing did I ever think that we'd be at this high of a rate for drivers. Our starting salary is $19.86, and it goes up from there. So our increase in raise, we did one last year, and we had a few increases this year. We've also increased our recruiting efforts. We have banners out, we have yard signs out, we've done Facebook, we've done ads on Facebook, we have Craigslist. A lot of our staff has put up flyers at grocery stores or wherever they can find to try and get drivers in. Some other changes that we have done, though, that we are planning for the next school year for 22-23 is we have adjusted bell times. Bell times have been adjusted 10 minutes later for middle schools and elementary schools. That extra 10 minutes will give us a little bit more wiggle room to get those kiddos to school on time. And so we're hoping that that will help with the transportation issues that we had this year, not having enough time to get them to their schools on time. Ernest Stapleton was moved to an early bell schedule. They are on the same bell schedule as Colinas and Cuesta. In doing this, we have those buses that we were using at Ernest Stapleton. We can add those to elementary schools. Schools like Vista Grande, they had some overloads where we had to do a couple double runs because there's been so many kiddos over there.
So we can add some schools to, add some buses to schools that have too many kiddos on the buses. And this will also help us shorten up those routes because we have more buses at those schools, so we can make the routes a little bit shorter. In addition, nearly all of the buses this coming school year will be 4 tiers. That means that they'll have a high school, an early elementary, a middle school, and a late elementary. In doing that, again, it will shorten the routes. One of the schools in particular that is difficult for us is Puesta, because it goes so far out that those routes are long. They may not have that many kiddos on the bus, but the routes are long and they take a long time, and those buses end up being late to their next school. So as we add more buses to Puesta and Colinas and make some other buses have 4 schools, we can shorten those routes so that they can get them done more quickly and get to their next school on time. We've consolidated bus stops. We've had lots of bus stops over the years that are in front of people's homes, or like at one end of the block and then another bus stop at the other end of the block. We did some consolidating last year, but we did a lot more work this year to consolidate those stops to make it more efficient and more timely for those routes. It takes a lot of time to just stop, put out your stop arm, pick up those kiddos and get going again. So we've consolidated a lot of those stops, moved them to intersections or easements or parks, whatever it is we need to do. We've also we're going to be discontinuing going to daycares. One of our issues with daycares is they tend to put kiddos on the bus that are not eligible for busing. They may actually live in a different school district, and it's very difficult to sort those kiddos out when they pull up to the daycares. Because a lot of times there's a new kiddo, but we don't have time to figure out if they belong on that bus or not. So we're constantly transporting kiddos that aren't eligible, which of course we don't get funded for to transport those kiddos. Additionally, those stops at those daycares take considerably longer because the bus has to sit there and wait for the daycare to be able to get some time to get a staff member to get those kiddos out to the bus. In the afternoon, it takes a long time to wait for them to have a staff member available to come out and get those kiddos off the bus. They're in the same position as everybody else is. They're short-staffed, and that has always been an issue going to the daycares. And so those are some things that we are already have in process for next year to try and get those kiddos to school on time. Questions?
Okay, go ahead, Jessica.
Yeah, I have one question is how many riders will this affect? How much is it gonna reduce our ridership?
We're guessing a little over 700 or so, 700, 750 maybe. Sometimes it's hard to tell if we're looking at student ridership now. I am afraid that some of our ridership might be a little lower on some of the buses because they're taking their kiddos to school because our buses are late. And so if we're looking at about 60 kiddos per school, the buses that it would reduce, we're looking at about 700, maybe 750 students.
And in turn, what does that affect for our funding that we receive? I don't remember the cost per unit for funding.
That's a good question.
Well, right now, we're about 2 million in the hole, our deficit is about 2 million. So, what it really comes down to, I know if we're having less students on the bus, the formula doesn't just really include students, but it also includes mileage. So we would get, with reduced ridership, we would get some type of reduced revenue. I don't really know what that number is going to be. But our issue, I think our primary issue really is getting the kids there on time. So I'm sure, we would get some reduced dollars, but right now we're in a $2 million deficit.
If it helps you at all, we currently transport about 8,400 students. So the 720, 750 out of there might give you an idea.
Less than 10%.
Does that help?
Lynn, I want to thank you first and foremost. It's a great report, but more importantly, thank you what you do for our children. I really been a proponent. I think we really should join in hands with the city and really look at the traffic safety at every school. And I think that's one thing that the drivers would really appreciate. I want to compliment on Stapleton because when I was running for office, that is a big concern. The traffic flow, the drivers trying to get in and out to make it to another route. And I think going earlier is going to make it a better situation for that 1,000 or so population we have at that school. But I did want to ask you if I can read my notes correctly. Four tiers.
Mhm.
What kind of reaction are you getting from the drivers that have been loyal that you do have? They feel like confident about it? Ready
So we have let them know at the end of last school year that a lot of buses will be going to 4 tiers. To tell you the honest truth, because we were so short last year, most buses did 4 tiers anyway. So there's some drivers that are not zippy about it, but they understand that that's what we need to do to get those kiddos to school on time. And at the same time, I think a lot of them are happy that the routes will be more timely. It's very stressful when you're out on a bus and you're running late, and then you start out late and you end up later and later. And so for consolidating the stops and making the route shorter because we can do 4 tiers is really in the end a relief for them. It's just extremely stressful whenever they're running late all day long.
I'm totally impressed with this whole thing. I really do think we need a traffic study or a safety study done, because if they're more cars are traveling with kids to school, and we need those buses to go to another tier to get to another school, and then we have parents that are late getting to work and trying to get kids to school. You know, these are 2,000-ton machines that, we certainly don't want a safety issue there. So, but thank you. This is
You're very
a
welcome.
well comprehensive report.
My question, I think Tyler briefly talked about the number of students. Have you broken that down by elementary, middle, and high?
I do have a report on that. I did not bring it with me.
Okay.
There will be more middle and elementary students that are affected, high schoolers not as much. And so part of that is if you think about Cleveland High School, and we want to move the walk zone from 2 miles to 2.5 miles, where for Cleveland, that really only encompasses one neighborhood. And so high school, there's not as big of an impact. But actually, I think middle school is going to be the one with the biggest impact. Elementary, you'd be surprised how many fewer kids that impacts than I would have expected. When we did the boundaries and looking at how many kids were impacted in elementary school, I expected it to be a little bit more. But I can find those numbers for you if you need them. And when we have those numbers, it tells you the eligible students as opposed to the students that actually ride, because that's different. It's how many eligible students were here.
Yeah, I know, right? I mean, as schools start, I'm more concerned about the daylight savings time when it gets dark a little early. I know the schools, when I'm thinking more about the morning time. I remember when my son was in school, he had to be at the bus stop, I think at like 6:20, somewhere in there. I mean, that's early. Now we're asking the kids to do a little extra walking. That's kind of what my concern is as well. I gotta be honest, if I'm a parent, I'd be a little concerned about that. I mean, we live in a society now, I think we all understand what's going on around us. And now you're asking my kid to walk to school,
Right.
just another 2/10 of a mile, half of a mile.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'd be a little concerned about
Yeah, I understand. Yeah.
I do not love, I don't love it. So my concern is, and so here's my question. So we have, I was just kind of like playing on Google Maps and looking at what neighborhoods this might affect. Correct. And so I don't know what we have in place as like, I know that like Unser, for instance, we're not gonna ask kids to cross Unser. But I don't know what Broadmoor is in there. And so looking at the community of Loma, Colorado, that whole community is within 2 miles of Eagle Ridge, and they would all be within walking distance. And so I don't know if we're expecting that, and that's gonna be during high school, getting into high school time. That would be the same time as high school's kind of going in, because it would take them about 40 minutes probably to walk over, depending on how fast they go. So is that one of the neighborhoods that we're looking at that will be in that walk?
Yes, it is. And as you were talking about Unser, we do have certain cross restrictions that we have to follow that are under PED regulations. And then it's not just, it goes by the number of cars that are on the road, the speed of the cars, and is there a safe walk path? And so there, especially in Rio Rancho, there are some roads that may have a higher rate of speed, and I want to say 30 or so, that may not have a walk path. They don't have sidewalks. And so we have to be mindful of those, and a lot of those are already in our routing system where they're mapped and we know where those are. Some of them we've had to have people go out and do, check it out and see what it looks like over there to see if it is safe for them to walk, if there's a safe walk path for them. And if we need to adjust the walk zone because it's unsafe. And so we do have some guidelines to go by, as well as taking a site visit to find out what it looks like over there. But yes, there's Loma, Colorado is over there.
And then looking at the state, I don't know if state statute is saying that is the right vocabulary for it, but they have like our original, that 1 mile, that 1.5, the
Correct.
2.
Correct.
So do we not need to, and maybe this is for David Mann, I don't know, but do we not have to go by that? Is that just a suggestion, or is that really what we're supposed to be going by, and we're?
No, those state statutes are, so what that statute is about is determining eligibility for a student. So if a student, for elementary, if a student lives more than 1 mile for elementary, we can transport closer or further. It just depends upon where your funding comes from. Does that make sense? So if we decided, so for elementary, right now, it's 1 mile. So they have to live over 1 mile to be eligible for transportation, and we get funding to get those students. If we chose to go only 1/2 mile from school, we can do that, but we can't count those students. But we can also choose to make the walk zone larger.
Okay, thank you for explaining that. And then as far as the bus stops go, we usually use that for the bus stops as well. So are we asking kids to possibly walk that distance to their bus stops too?
No, not necessarily. We try to keep the bus stops within 1/2 mile, that they don't have to walk any further than 1/2 mile. State statutes say that a bus rider cannot walk any further than a walker according to their statutes. So an elementary kiddo cannot walk further than 1 mile to their bus stop, the way the statutes are. If we moved it to 1.2 miles, they still cannot walk further than 1 mile to their bus stop. But we don't have anybody walking that far to a bus stop.
And we don't have any plans to change that with the bus stops?
No, not at all.
And then really quick question. So as far as the daycares go, have we given notice yet that is the plan for
We are working on, I spoke with Beth about that last week.
Okay.
And so we're working on getting some notice out. I have spoken to some daycares. And actually last year I spoke to some of the bigger daycares, the nationwide daycares, to let them know that there's a good possibility that would not be happening any longer. I know APS doesn't go to daycares for that reason. A big portion of it is because there's too many ineligible students that get on there. And if for some reason we count those students that shouldn't be, then we would have to pay back the state funding we got on them. And then the time it takes to stop at daycares is ridiculous long.
No, it makes sense. It's just last year we got tons and tons of letters from daycares who I think weren't being picked up the same. And so I just want to make sure we give notice before.
Right, yes. We want to make sure that we get it all in writing. The ones that I've spoken to them on the phone.
Okay. And then another question, do you think that this could be with all of these other things that we're implementing, especially with Stapleton itself going to that different time, is it possibly premature that we changing these walk zones already? Or is that something that we should see how it goes with all these other changes that we made, and if it makes a difference? It was so hard, Lynn, like I felt for you last year, as you know, like I always did. At the same time, I know as a board, we're gonna get beat up for this, and so.
So part of the reason also of changing the walk zones is because it will reduce 2 or 3 buses that we would not need to run. And I know that doesn't sound like very many, but when you have one bus that you don't have a driver for, that runs 4 schools, it takes a minimum of 4 buses to cover that one bus. Sometimes it takes more than that because of loads. And so let's say it can take up to 6 buses to cover one bus that you don't have a driver for. And so you already know the position we were in last year. And so even though it's only a few buses that may save, it makes a huge difference when you don't have a driver for that route and you're trying to cover that route, because that's where you run into 30, 45 minutes late for school. Does that make sense? And so that's part of it. We have had some good success just in the last couple of weeks getting applications in. We currently have 17 drivers that we need to hire that we know about so far. We have 13 applicants in process that are going through their criminal background and things like that. And we have 6 more to interview. And however, there's only my experience has always been that about maybe 2/3 to 3/4 of the people that we put into training actually make it through. So you have to hire a whole lot more for everybody to make it through training. Does that answer a little bit?
Any of these changes affect special education?
No, this is all general ed.
Thank you.
Dr. Cleveland, you want
Well, it's just, this, as you've all said, this is a really hard decision because it's not going to be met with much enthusiasm, I'm afraid, in the community. However, we don't know what else we do. I mean, we've looked at a lot of different options. I think one of the things that is not related to the walk zones, but is important, related to transportation, is we're going to have to tighten up discipline. And having gone out one day and talked to some of the drivers, I asked them, what are your greatest problems? And they don't like the 4-tier. We're one of the few districts that has to do it. Us in Albuquerque, Las Cruces doesn't do it, Santa Fe doesn't do it, but we have to do it. And so it is a more frustrating thing, but that's not anything we have control over. That needs to be a change at the state level. But it's frustrating. I'm just gonna leave a thing
I
out.
just realized.
It is frustrating that other districts, one slightly larger, slightly smaller, only have 2 tiers, and we have 4. And it affects our drivers' morale, it affects the amount of work they have to do, and it's just really not very fair. But we have not been able to get it changed. It's the same for the Albuquerque Public School District. I've never understood how you can put Rio Rancho between the 2 districts and make us do that and not the other 2. But it does make their job harder and more challenging. As I mentioned earlier, we're going to have to get a hold of the discipline on the buses. We're going to have to do it. That's going to be hard too. But the drivers tell me that the bad discipline, it's not only makes their job very challenging and difficult, but it's dangerous. And the fear of being distracted. So we're going to have to let parents know that we're tightening up a little bit in that area as well. I feel very badly about not being able to serve parents the way we have over years and years. We've tried so hard to accommodate the needs of our families and know that they have a lot of challenges too. But some of the things that we've done for a long time, as you've heard, is just, we don't feel we can do that anymore. One of the other things that I think is another unintended outcome will be that we will have more parents not put their children on the bus. And so we have seen our I think at one time we transported over 13,000 kids on a bus. Now we're around 8,000 and it's going to drop even more. So what that means is more parents will put their children in cars and will take them to school, and the traffic is going to get worse there. So, Mr. Tripp, to your point, I mean, maybe we can reach out and see what we can do, working with the city on managing that traffic, because most of the problems that we get with parents is that they're late to work and they're in trouble and they're worried about their employer and they're stuck in traffic because the traffic isn't moving. And that's where they get ugly and aggressive with our staff. And it's, maybe we can look at something, but we're gonna see more driving. Because a lot of parents, I believe, will not have their children walk that far, especially young children. So, we will have to be thinking about how we will manage that additional traffic. But I will tell you that transportation's looked at every possible thing they could, every option that they could think of. And short of having more drivers, and more buses. I believe there was a time, how many buses do we have now?
64 routes.
And I believe at one time we had close to 100. So our buses have also been cut over time. So it's just a combination of a lot of factors, none of them really of our making. But it is a very challenging situation. But I only feel it's fair to tell the board this will not be met, but a lot of enthusiasm parents, it will not be. So I think we need to be prepared for that. And I don't know there'll be a lot of enthusiasm related to student discipline. We have to tighten up. And we have got to make our buses more orderly. And that's another reason that sometimes people don't put their kids on the buses, because sometimes the students are a little bit rowdy. So there's a lot of things that we need to work on. My last comment is our transportation staff has worked so hard to deal with these issues. I just want you to know how hard they work to try to make it work for everyone. And so I want to thank Glenn and also the drivers and the others there. No one could have worked harder to try to resolve these issues. So I thank you for that work. We are faced with some really difficult challenges. The other is an issue then it has to work, because if we do all these things and then it doesn't work, we're really gonna get killed. So I think that's where they've taken a very careful, cautious approach to this, to try to make sure there is enough time for the buses to get around and pick up the kids. My last comment is it's very hard for kids to go to school in the dark and come home in the dark. And that is a challenge.
I just got one more thing I want to ask. If this is passed, if we agree to do this, is there an opportunity and chance to come back and revise this at some point in time when we start to get more drivers? I mean, because, and I think we might want to communicate that as well, that, hey, this is temporary thing until we can get things fixed.
Certainly, I would certainly hope so. Because we are choosing to do this, if that were the case. That does not mean it's in statutes or anything. It's just that we're taking this step to try to get kids to school on time so they can get their education. But we can, should we get fully staffed, certainly, that would not be a problem. And I really do also want to thank all of the drivers for all of their hard work. Really, I have never, ever seen a group of drivers pitch in like the drivers did this year. We had them doing all kinds of things. And, everybody just pitched in and got it done. They call on the radio and say, I'll go get them. Let me drop these guys. Let me go get the other group. It was amazing this year.
Great, thank you. Okay, so this is a first reading, so is there any further direction that the board wants to give before? So it'll be on the agenda next time to vote on. I truly do not love the development.
Just the numbers that we had asked.
Yes, I can get those for you.
And I know you guys have really done your homework to try to look at other options, but the only other thing that I saw in reviewing the statutes is that we do have the ability to do contract work. I know this is a nationwide issue. I'm sure there's not, a company, but I know we've done that with other things, like using the staffing services for substitute services. Have we looked into to see if there's any charter services or anything like that that we could use to supplement our routes? Have we looked at those options?
No, I have not. As far as school bus contractors, I just happen to know that any of the school bus contractors in the area are in pretty much the same boat. Some are in way worse shape than others, but everybody does not have extra drivers, that I do know.
I think Dr. Cleveland might speak to that. We talked a little bit about
Yeah,
that.
we were contract for many years. And we finally gave up contract because the service was so terribly poor, and went to our own. And our hopes was that if we had it in-house, we paid better, we gave people benefits, that we would attract more drivers, and we did initially. But now that doesn't seem to be the case. We can go back out and look again, you know, and do a combination. But it was, I can tell you when we had it, we let it go because it was not very good. It is a challenge. I spoke with one parent, and I don't know, you know, whether it's true or not, but he said his child had never been first period on time the whole year. And had missed good part of the language arts block in the morning. I don't know, you know, but how can you hold a student or that teacher accountable? You can't get the students there for learning when that learning is taking place. So the other thing that bothers me a lot is our less affluent kids have less of an opportunity to find a way to school sometimes. And so they're the ones that don't get picked up and don't get to school on time, where maybe some other families are able to pay someone or find another way around that. And so it's an equity fairness issue too, I think. We want all our children to be school on time and be able to be there when the learning starts. I think there were a lot of children that never got to school on time this entire year. And that's just.
I would agree. There's certain routes that are easier to double up on or cover. And unfortunately, because they are easier to do because of time and distance, those kiddos consistently are late. I did speak with the contractor in Las Cruces, Kincaid Enterprises. They're in the same boat we are. They're having an extremely difficult time getting bus drivers.
We did contract out all of our athletic travel this year, and that was fairly successful. But they, of course, are making additional money on that. Makes it more attractive, I think, for them. But I don't know, Bruce, if you want to comment on that. But that took some load off of the to and from. I had a contractor to do that extracurricular.
Well, and on that note, just as you guys were talking, I talked to a family this year, and the student hadn't been to school on time, you know. And it was the same with my kids. I was working, so I wasn't at home when that happened. But she was considering sending her daughter, just having her walk or something else, and she would have been going across some of those more dangerous roads, like uncertain. And so by doing that, you do have a better chance of those students who would be in that dangerous kind of situation of walking across, having a better chance of being picked up. So I can't see a benefit with that. So, okay, with that, any other questions from the board or anything else?
Welcome.
Okay, thank you so much. You're very welcome. Thank you. This was probably, other than CTE, this was the other one that I was going to bring out tonight. So thank you for taking some time to answer questions on that. Okay, for our last two items, so for our first one, discussion of possible approval of the completed end of the year 2021-2022 evaluation of the superintendent as completed by the Board of Education in executive session. Do we have a motion?
Madam President, this is Board Member Tyler. I'd like to make a motion to approve the completed end of the year 2021-2022 evaluation of the superintendent as completed by the Board of Education in executive session.
That's a cool question. You've done both of these.
I asked them to separate them out just since they're a little bit different.
Okay, Board Member Jeff Morgan, a second. I just want to get it done.
Yeah, I know. I asked them to separate to make it cleaner. Why don't we go ahead? Can we do an all in favor on this one, David? Do you feel we could do an all in favor, or should we do a roll call on this?
I'll do a roll call.
I mean, at this point, it takes as much time when I ask the question. Okay, thank you. Can you do a roll call for us on this one?
I'll talk fast. Vice President Morgan.
Yes.
Board Member Tripp.
Yes.
Board Member Tyler.
Yes.
President Gale.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0.
And just to say, it was just a delight to work with the board and go through that evaluation process, and a delight to talk to Dr. Cleveland during that time, so thank you. And then our last item is to consider the approval of the superintendent's contract.
Board Member Jeff Morgan, I make a motion to approve the approval of the superintendent's contract.
I have a question. Are we doing the 3-year rule? Do we need to state that?
I don't know if
because
we
I
made that
think
change. Yes.
we need to, can I make that friendly
Yeah.
amendment?
Yeah, make that change because I don't.
I'd like to
think I
make a
can talk
friendly
about it.
amendment to the motion and second it, that it's for the next 3 school years.
Thank you.
If you want to
David, would you?
specify that in the minutes, that it's those 2022, 23, 24, 25.
Yeah, can you
So
talk with Warren Hatch, and, because we didn't make that change, so it'll be from a 2-year to 3-year.
3 years.
Okay, so the motion's for a 3-year. Thank you, Gary Tripp, for putting that in there. Okay, and you
And I
second.
second it. Yeah.
Okay. So we have a motion by Jeffrey Morgan and a second by Gary Tripp, and that's for the contract with 3 years. And can we take a roll call on that, Kim?
Vice President Morgan.
Yes.
Board Member Tripp.
Yes.
Board Member Tyler.
Yes.
President Jelton.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0.
Thank you so much.
I think-
Thank you, our superintendent. Thank you all the schools. Appreciate her so much. Going into our advanced planning, we have July 11th, we have our next regular board meeting, so really enjoy your 4th of July, everyone. And that will be at 5:30 here. And July 14th through the 15th is the New Mexico School Board Leadership Retreat, that will be in Taos, New Mexico.
Can you stick your hand up if you're planning to go, please,
To the retreat in Taos, and so
so I can get you registered?
you can.
Yeah, thank you.
And then we have, on July 25th, will be an audit committee meeting at 4:30 in the training center. Also on the 25th will be a regular board meeting at 5:30. And then it's crazy to go into school, so then August 4th will be 6th and 9th grade jumpstart day. The 5th will be the first day of classes for middle and high school, where did the summer go? And then August 8th will be the first day for elementary school. Also on that day will be a finance committee meeting and a regular board meeting. Anything on advanced planning, any questions on those things? No? Okay. So anything from you, Dr. Cleveland, on advanced planning? Okay. So with that, our board meeting is adjourned for tonight. Thank you all so much.